right, well, I'm going to share screen here to kind of get things underway. Basically, like he said, multifaceted design background. So that's what I'm kind of going to talk about for you guys. I know that when you're in school, a lot of times they're wanting you to focus on a direction or, pick a specialty, whether you want to do a certain type of design as a target. And I'm just going to kind of talk about a little bit about what the benefits are of kind of being a generalist or, and doing the pros and cons and stuff like that of being diverse. So first, I'll just kind of give you a little bit of my background. Been doing design for over 30 years now. I've worked for several different design firms or design consultancies, worked for different corporate companies, very different type of design work when you're working in those two environments. As far as what I've designed over the years, all kinds of stuff in between, semi trucks to cell phones. It's quite a wide range of products when you're doing this kind of stuff. So, kind of my diversity of interests started back in high school. I think I just had a lot of passion for learning new things. I was involved in the theaters, performance, choir type stuff, art, architecture, wood shop, metal shop, anything that they had to offer, I would take it just to, be able to kind of experience all of those different things. After high school, that diversity continued through college, or in my case, all four colleges that I went to. Out of high school, I started at a design school, or kind of more like a graphic design school that taught you all of everything like illustration and photography, anything to deal with print media kind of. Back then, it was all about you had to, create all of your camera ready artwork and stuff like that. That's how long ago it was. One of my instructors there noticed that I had a love of cars, and she recommended that I pursue automotive design. And so that's when I went to CCS and started to learn about product design and automotive design. And CCS was kind of like I was like a kid in a candy store as far as all kinds of new stuff with all of the craft type design that was there. They had, glass blowing, fabric design, metal smithing, which I took. It was just a lot of neat things to learn. And it was kind of, I think I overdid it as far as trying to take too many classes. And then I transferred from there to Auburn University. But in order to do that, because of the different design degrees, I had to go to a community college to kind of take some core classes in math and science and things like that CCS didn't require. But again, instead of just taking those requirements, the community college that I went to had a strong music program. And so I took a bunch of classes in performance there and also music composition and stuff like that. So there was a lot of things that were starting to kind of mold my interests going forward into my career. And Auburn University was a very different school than CCS. They had a whole different design methodology that they teach. But then again, there's a lot of other things besides design at Auburn. And that's when I, took some stone sculpture classes and things like that were just kind of things on the side to kind of broaden the skill sets. So that diverse background kind of transferred into what I did for a living, working at a bunch of different companies, doing product design, transportation design. Here in the last couple of years, kind of delved into marine and exhibit. And before that, I did, thematic design as well as, visualization for architecture. So it's just kind of a lot of fun, different things that I've been doing over the past 30 years. So I just want to kind of go over embracing the, diverse design specialties. Our schools, our design schools today, they kind of really do give you a tool set for doing this. Most of the skills that you learn in school, like sketching and modeling and illustration and all that fun stuff, really can be used in all of these different disciplines. Same thing goes for design principles that you're taught. These things are very universal, whether you're doing UI design or exhibit design, product design, doesn't matter. It's all related. So having a good foundation, in these different principles really kind of sets the tone for what you'll be able to do as a designer once you're out. You can focus on one thing. Like when I was right out of school, I basically was product design. Worked 6 years for PV Electronics, designing musical equipment, and that was what I pretty much all I did. It wasn't until leaving there and going to work for a consultancy that I started to diversify a little bit on the types of programs and products that I was designing. That's the nice thing about working for a consultancy is, every project that comes in, it's kind of like starting over. You have to learn, you have to do a lot of research to kind of get up to speed on what you're designing. Because one week it can be, routers for fiber optics. So the following week you could be doing a baby stroller. Who knows? Just depends on the clients that come in. And so for me in my career, it's kind of like there's always there's a first time for everything. And it's kind of a tough thing to do in that a lot of times, like for example, the bottom there with the thematic design. Really, if you don't have any thematic design experience, it's really difficult to get your foot in the door at places because they're wanting people that have had the design experience. But it was my experience that really there's no different in doing the thematic design than doing any kind of product design. It's all the same process. Everything is, it's just the only thing that's different really is learning terminologies and things like that they use and methodologies that they use in creating their deliverables. I was fortunate in the case of the thematic design that I actually was contacted by the company I went to work for. So I didn't have to fight my way in. They were basically intrigued by what they saw just with my portfolio, that I didn't have to fight as hard. But the marine design, again, it's kind of, I'll tell a story a little bit later about how the yacht project came about. But again, going into that, it's like, the client would send me an email saying, okay, we're going to work on this, and this. Half the things he's saying, I don't understand. I have to go look them up. Or in some cases, I just asked him outright, what are you talking about here? Exhibit design is like there's a lot of terminology and stuff like that the client uses when he's describing what they're looking for. And it took me a little bit of a learning curve to start to understand that. But it really, because of our design background, it makes it easier for us, I think, to kind of cross over into these different specialties. The other thing that happens as you go through these different professions is your skill set evolves. You learn new things, you learn new tools. Pretty much everywhere you go, there's a good chance you're going to have to learn a new software. There's a lot of industry standards now, but the ability to train yourself on new software is valuable because there's going to be that company that uses that weird thing that you need to learn to do what they want to do. It's always nice learning these new things because it just basically gives you the tools for going into other specialties and things like that you can then cross over, and it'll help you out and kind of make you the hero at your new place because it's like, oh, they never thought of that before, that kind of thing. So in breaking the boundaries, how do you do it? Well, there's a lot of crossover and things like that that you probably realize this already, that there's a lot of similarities between different things. Whether you're designing a thematic design for a ride or an experience, it's very similar to the stuff that you would do for an exhibit design. They both involve people. They both involve traffic flow and all these things that you need to consider. When I worked for Bose, we did a lot of what they call infotainment systems, which are basically your radio, and now that basic, you have that screen that has everything on it now for your music sources and information navigation. All that stuff is all there. um, and for Bose, it was just the head unit for the radio. Whereas a lot of that same information that you have to know the different types of human factors, reach studies, all of that fun stuff, that applies when you're doing the instrument panel for a truck. So there's crossover of knowledge between these different disciplines. One thing you may learn how to do really nice surfacing in your CAD program. The techniques that you learn to do these A-class surfaces for your models and stuff like that make it easier to do stuff. Like for example, for the marine design. The marine design, the way they design the hulls, they still do it two-dimensionally. They have what they call station points, and it's a cross section of what the ship looks like, and then you blend a surface over those cross sections. But if you have a knowledge of how to build surfaces, from just making models and things like that, you're already kind of a step ahead, because now a technique to create those surfaces. And there's just other examples here, just of different things that are similar form factors or similar things that you need to concern yourself with, grouping of controls, usability, and all that fun stuff. So one of the examples I'll do here is a lot of what I was able to bring to the thematic company. They brought me on to do this really cool project. It was called Halo Outpost Discovery. And basically it was about bringing the game to real life, and in the form of a touring experience where you would have kind of artifacts from the game, different game experiences, interactive simulations and things like that. But this company that before this, their main experience was doing laser tag. They would make pretty much anything that they did. If you could router it out of a piece of MDF, that's how it was constructed. They did a few, if they needed something three-dimensional, it was either found objects or, whatever they could cut out of 2D shapes and hand sand. They didn't do a lot of other, 3D printing was still kind of just becoming affordable. This was done in 2017, so 6 years ago. It's not as prevalent as it is now, but basically, they also didn't really have much grasp on 3D modeling. The thematic industry really does a lot in the 2D world. Everything is done in AutoCAD, in two-dimensional drawings, elevations. Nothing is, it's changing slowly, but they still do everything two-dimensionally. So they didn't have a lot of experience with taking these gaming files, these 3D assets that were in the game, and they needed to be able to bring those to life. So having the experience of working with a bunch of 3D files in a bunch of different formats over the years, was able to introduce them to a process of how that, we could take that geometry and either do direct conversions, because sometimes with the gaming assets, you have a lot of detail, like that flood form there in the middle picture. It's a very detailed model in the CAD, in the game. So we didn't have to really do much modeling to it or modifications to it other than posing it, for when we wanted to print, 3D print the model. Other things required us to actually, because it was such a low poly model in the game, they use a lot of tricks in the game where they'll use image maps and things like that to give the object form, but the actual 3D object is very rough. And if you were to 3D print it, it wouldn't really look like anything. So we would have to, use our traditional modeling skills and work over that rough geometry and build 3D models that we could then, 3D print. So introducing these guys to the world of 3D printing, they were able to make a lot of the artifacts. We had a bunch of different suppliers going at the same time. They were, they actually outsourced a lot of the larger 3D printed models just because of the scale. As you know, 3D printing is slow. And when you're printing a 10-foot tall creature, it took, 30 machines to working a month to print these things out. It was pretty crazy. And we had several different suppliers working on the different aspects to try to get everything printed in time for the show. And then also, they didn't have a lot of experience with casting or making molds and things like that, silicone molds of parts. So we were able to, get them up to speed on doing mini production. Once we had a nice 3D printed part that was well sanded, we were able to, make a mold of it and then cast an infinite number more relatively quickly, which helped them out a lot. So as a designer, you're going to want a diverse toolkit. And this slide looks really familiar to the one earlier. Basically, the kind of thing that you'll want to do is you'll want to, expose yourself to new softwares. It's a lot of times people are complacent. They have a particular program that they like to use, and they need, I don't know if you can hear that. It was a rocket taking off. But anyways, you kind of get comfortable in a program, but then a lot of times a new program will come along that really makes your life a lot easier. It's just taking the time to, learn what its capabilities are and work them to you. Expose yourself to as many tools as you can. If you know how to, work a 3D printer, that's great. If you, learn how to do, the programming for a 2D router, which is really similar to a 3D printer, just a larger scale, it's all good things to have. Always, new technologies. Try to expose yourself to, different things, especially if it's a technology that is used in the industry that you're wanting to try to target. If you go in having a little bit of a history or knowing about these different types of technologies, it gives you a leg up. And then, also, pay attention to new trends. There's a lot of discussion going on around Midjourney. It's a powerful tool. It kind of makes some of what we do obsolete, but at the same time, it enables us get to a design decision quicker. So just try to stay well-rounded there. In regards to Midjourney, this is kind of one of those things where it's like just random happenstance might lead you into something that you've always wanted to do. I was playing a lot with Midjourney. I really enjoy, challenging it and coming up with, new designs and things like that for things that I've always just kind of, had a interest in or whatever. I was always a fan of the Beatnik Bandit. It was a hot rod that was designed in the 60s. And I thought, well, it'd be kind of cool. What would be a more modern looking one? So I challenged Midjourney to it and ended up with this image, which I shared on my social media. And just by random happenstance, the guy that owns the yacht company came across it and reached out to me and was, he says, I really like what I'm seeing there. I said, well, that's, it's pixels. It's not really real surfaces or anything like that. And then he says, well, can you do surfacing and all that? And one thing led to another, and did like a hull test for him to show that I could model a boat hull. And then I was off and running modeling this 46-meter yacht, about 150 feet or so. But it was probably about 3 or 4 month process of starting from scratch and building the model and getting them the stuff that they needed to be able to put on their website. But it's like I've always wanted to do yacht design. You always see the stuff in the magazines and online of people doing cool yachts and whatnot. And so this random thing of Midjourney opened a door for me to be able to pursue this. So, always explore, always kind of you keep your options open. When you do jump into a new profession or a new specialty, you really need to take the time to do some knowledge building. There's a lot of things that are kind of specific to each of those industries, and that's what they really need you to know. So there's several different ways that you can get up to speed. One of them is, ask your new colleagues. Most of the time they're eager and willing to explain, what they do and how they do it. They're just as interested in you as you are in them, because you're coming at things from a whole new approach. So they're looking to learn from you, and just as much as you're trying to get information from them. It's the one thing I will say is, you want to try and make sure you take good notes, or commit it to memory, because they'll help you the first few times, but if you keep on asking them, then you become a nuisance. But a lot of information is out there now on Google or other web resources. There's a lot of times you'll find communities that are based around your design of interests, and you can learn a lot on those message boards and things like that. You can learn by checking out different organizations and things like that. Like for thematic design, they have basically it's like the equivalent of the IDSA, but it's just for exhibit design, or not exhibit designers, but thematic designers. And then another tool that's kind of come out are the chatbots. I rather like GTP4. It's like Google on steroids. It gives you the summaries. Like you ask it about a certain thing. Like on Google, if you look for something, it's going to give you a resource of where you can find the information, but then you still have to read it, and it takes a lot of time. Here, the chatbot will summarize it for you very quickly, and then you can dive into it a lot easier, and more directly. And then now you have a specific thing that you can go target in Google, to make sure, one, that the accuracy of the chatbot, because sometimes it's off. it does tell you wrong information. I've come across that several times. It's like you're reading it and going, wait a minute. But it does help a lot, speed things up. Okay, so basically that kind of comes down to what you do to overcome the challenges when you are going into a new field. The one of the key things is you're going to have to prove your credibility to the team. You're going to go into it as the outsider, who's never done any of this before. So why should they trust you? Why do they need to listen to you? So you need to be on your best behavior, I guess. But basically you need to show them that you can bring something to the table, and that your abilities do cross those divides. Spend the time to find out about common practices. One of the things that I had to learn doing the theming was a lot of stuff that dealt with architecture, how to read floor plans, site plans, reflected ceiling plans, all these things that they do day in, day out. But it's like when they said, have you looked at the RCP? I'm like, what's the RCP? I, I had no idea. So it's like, spend some time, do the research for stuff that's industry specific. And if, again, like I say, they're happy to point these things out to you or where you can find this information. Um, and then, the last thing is, you need to get up to speed with the new tools. Um, like I said, the thematic place, used AutoCAD. I was like, oh, I'm going back in time. What is this archaic tool? But yes, I had to get up to speed on using it because that's how all the presentations were done. It's what the clients expected, or their clients expected as deliverables. So it was something that had to happen. Um, so you know uh, leads to how to describe your diversity to a potential employer. Okay, so you're coming to this new specialty that you want to do. How do you tell them that you can, convince them that you can do what they need you to do? And so, leverage analogous processes. Like I was saying earlier in the presentation, there's a lot of things that overlap. So, kind of highlight your abilities that will are usable in this new field. Basically say, yes, I've never designed a ship before, but I know how to surface. I know how to create three-dimensional geometry, and explain, a little bit more in detail. Basically, it's like the equivalent of the IDSA, but it's just for exhibit design, or not exhibit designers, but thematic designers. Detail of what it is that, how much experience you have in doing that. That'll go a long ways. Look for similarities of past experiences to, what you're going to be doing. Like for me, when I started doing the exhibit design, I was able to show them examples of the interactive experiences for the Halo experience. And, it's basically showing them the layout, the traffic flow, all of those kind of things. To the booth layout, it's a very similar process. So they were able to see and make a connection there. And then lastly, look at, research the things that that you're not going to know or have a direct experience with. There are things that you will have to do research on, and you just need to find out what those resources are when you're talking to your potential employer. Say, can you point me in a direction of, this document or this practice or whatever it is that you're going to be doing, so that you can, get yourself up to speed a little faster for your next meeting with them, or if it might be something that they ask you to do, to say, hey, get yourself familiar with this, come back after you've done that, and we'll talk again. So basically, the things to remember when you're going through this process is, keep breaking the boundaries, and rise above the challenges. There's no room to be complacent. You're going to always want to, push your skills, push your knowledge base. You want to always adapt. Design changes. The design landscape now compared to when I graduated, very, very different. It used to be when you said, hey, you're a product designer, everybody said, oh, I know what that is. Now, product designer has such a diverse meaning, and it's kind of tricky. So, keep a willingness to explore, craft, create, um, do things that may not necessarily be a direct link to your design, but it will definitely help you grow because you never know what side things are going to influence your design, the design work that you do. An antidote to that was what I was showing Max before. I don't know if it's you guys can see this, but just making prop replicas. You as a designer, we're perfect for doing that kind of stuff. I know a lot of designers that are into trains and other things that you know use our skill sets extensively, and they're just nice hobbies for designers. But find something that interests you, and create. And then the last one is just always keep your passion for design, and keep your purpose and your creativity. These are some of my links if you want to see some of my other work. And then if you ever want to contact me, feel free to send me an invite on LinkedIn to connect. Be glad to answer any of your questions there.